When I got told that I was going to be laid off, immediately I thought to myself that maybe people will see me as a failure. But mine felt like nothing, a strange, eerie calm. That's the part that scared me more. But that was a few years ago now. I've had time to sit with it and be honest about what it actually felt like, not the version you post on LinkedIn. Because the stuff people actually feel when they get laid off, that's what people don't talk about. In 2025 alone here in the UK, over 315,000 UK jobs were flagged for redundancy. That's the worst year since COVID. This isn't niche. This is the job market right now. So we're covering three things: the emotional stages you go through during a layoff, the practical moves you need to make in the first 2 weeks, and the mindset shift that actually keeps you moving forward. By the end of this, you'll know how to feel and what to do if a layoff ever hits you, or if it already has. So nobody prepares you for the emotional side of being laid off. Everyone skips straight to update your CV. So let's start where it actually starts. So that feeling when it's first announced, it's that numb calm, which is less common than people actually admit. Your brain, it doesn't process it in real time because it's such a shock to the system. So it shuts down that emotion in that moment. So then comes the questioning: was it my fault? Was my performance not good enough? Did I miss something? Even when it's due to budget reasons, headcount, your brain will still find a way to make it personal. And for a lot of us, especially from like South Asian or immigrant backgrounds, your job almost feels like proof to yourself, proof to your parents, your community. A layoff threatens that identity overnight. And that's a specific kind of painful. But here's what I want you to hear and take away, is that being laid off is not the same as being fired. Most people blur the two, and that's what creates a lot of sadness and frustration. For me, that first stage, I felt that I needed to just be calm and control what I could control. This was not something that I could control, the fact that I was being laid off. And funny enough, this is when I started my self-improvement journey. So part of being on that journey is you learn more about yourself emotionally. You try and pick up different ways to improve your emotional state. And that was something I just come across from Stoicism, was to just control what I could control. So I could control my reaction to being laid off, but I didn't have any control over the decision of being laid off. But during the actual layoff process, it actually feels like a real limbo stage. You see, in the UK, it works a bit differently, where we have a process that goes on for weeks and weeks. So during that time, the tension can really build, and just that feeling of I'm going to be laid off very soon, it just cripples you over the next few weeks. But this is often the worst part psychologically, because you know that you're being laid off. You know that talks are going on, but you know that you have no control over it. And that's the most upsetting thing. You're still in the building, you're still working, but you're already out of the door. Mentally, you're already gone. But this is where sometimes anger can kick in. And that's totally valid, but it means nothing in that moment. And you have to be careful. This is where a lot of people trip up. You still have to keep things under control. When you're leaving a company, this is something my mentor said to me: you never want to burn any bridges, and you never want to send any messages you'll regret. See, when you're going through this stage of being laid off, your emotions are just so high because you're thinking, how am I going to get another job? But you've got to also keep that angry side of you in check, because if you burn a bridge, you just never know when you'll need that later on. Maybe a reference for a future job, or maybe someone you know or insulted at that company that you're leaving ends up working at a future job that you may be looking for. It's funny how life can work. By all means, make your feelings clear, but do so in a very respectful way that doesn't attack anyone personally. There's also a bit of a comparison trap that comes because you're watching people keep their jobs or getting promoted. You've got to stop, because that's only just going to make you feel more paranoid and more upset. And you've also got to allow that loss. You've got to allow that grief and that feeling of loss to also have its moment as well. You can't be completely stoic and just brush it off, because we're not machines. That's not how life works. And I think the toughest part of when you're going through a layoff is trying to keep everything else in your life under control, like your routine, your identity, your relationships with people at work and at home, all of that stuff. You got to give that time to settle as well. But then once it actually happens, there's that quiet, eerie feeling that I mentioned at the start. That really comes in and just hits different, because you wake up and there's nowhere to be. You're not logging in anymore. Your laptop is taken away from you and you're just there now. You've got all the time in the world, but for many of us, when you get laid off, you got no money coming in to supplement that. The structure is gone. And for some people, again, this can be freeing, but for others, it almost feels like there's nowhere to go. And telling people is hard, especially in migrant communities, family especially. And there's that pressure that you have to have answers before. And there's almost this pressure that you've got to know what you're doing next straight away. But again, with all that emotional battle you're doing, it's hard to have that backup plan in place. It's so exhausting to have to answer those questions again and again and again. And also, there's this identity vacuum. It's like, who am I without this job? It's a question a lot of guys have never actually taken time to ask themselves before, myself included. And it's actually very important. You see, when I was growing up, I spent years defining myself by what I did. The layoff forced me to rethink that completely and figure out who I was as a person without it. It's uncomfortable, but it was necessary. And again, because I'd started my self-improvement journey at that point, that was just a very lucky coincidence that I was starting to go on that journey already. But what you can't afford to sit on is the practical side, because there are things that you need to actually do within the first 2 weeks that a lot of people don't know about. So the first week, you've got to stabilize yourself. You've got to know what your financial situation is looking like. What's the amount of money you're spending per month? What's the amount that's been coming in? Where are you putting that money away? I know money is not the most important thing in life, but trust me, when you're losing your job, when you're about to lose your job, it very quickly does become the most important thing in your life. Write it down. You need to know your real runway that you have before you start making big decisions. Check what you're entitled to from a redundancy or a layoff perspective. In the UK, you get a certain level of pay, your notice period, any unused holiday that you're owed. And if you've been employed for over 2 years, then you're entitled to the basic redundancy pay in the UK. Don't leave money on the table. Okay, cool. And going back to finances, the hard truth is you've got to cut what's not essential. Not forever, but just until you have a bit more stability. Cancel what you don't need. Pause what you can. Give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Maybe there are a few subscriptions that you need to cut back on. Maybe there's a holiday that you have planned that you may not be able to afford anymore. That's fine. Postpone that for a future date. And also tell the right people honestly. Not everyone, not LinkedIn yet, but your closest people. The people who will be there for you and support you, not stress you out and ask you questions you don't want to answer. Because carrying it alone is a burden that you don't want to have on your shoulders. I know the temptation to post on LinkedIn and it feels like you're being proactive, but it's not. In week 2, you've got to start building that structure. So be very conscious about how you're spending your time. After you've been laid off, you've got all the time in the world, but if you don't apply some sort of structure to it, you're going to feel very lost and lonely. So your body and your mind need routine to kind of keep functioning as normal when everything else is unstable. So maybe in the morning you decide to go to the gym, go for a walk, something physical in the morning to start your day. And that's what helps keep anxiety at a bit of a distance. So of course you'll be tempted to start applying straight away. But before you do that, know exactly what you're applying for. It sounds so obvious, but a lot of people skip this step because most people will go onto LinkedIn or Indeed and they will see the job postings and they will just hit easy apply for every single one of them. That's what 99% of people will do. But that's not the smart way to do it. Write down what your skills are, what you're actually good at, what qualifications you have, what you're genuinely good at, not just what you've been doing. And then on LinkedIn, the best advice I can give is look at hiring managers for certain positions that you're interested in. Connect with them. Go on the company website. Look a little bit into their values and what they do and the markets they operate in. And start tailoring your application around that so that you're already talking like you're part of the company before you even join the company. And that will stand out to recruiters. You see, 5 quality applications will always beat 50 easy applies every time. And even a well-written message to someone in your network who could help you, that can go a long way because they may know more about you than you may be able to express in your CV. And if you really want to take it to another level, build a tracking system, a spreadsheet. I did that after I left university, where I had a tracker for every job that I applied to and what stage I got to, what company it was with. And it doesn't work perfectly and it does create a bit of anxiety, but it gave me a bit of a sense of control. And that's what you need when everything else feels out of control. You see, the practical stuff, like I've said, you can plan for. But the reason that most guys take twice as long to get this right isn't because they're not applying as much. It's their relationship with the story they're telling themselves. And that's what the last section is about. And if this is landing and hitting with you, then press the subscribe button below. So this section is shorter, but it's gonna actually change the timeline of your recovery. The instinct is to just get back straight to what you're doing as fast as possible. And that's completely fair because there's obviously money that you have to make to put food on the table. And also there's that sense of growth in your career that you want to build. But it's also a bit of a trap because where you were was the version of your career that just got out. See, the layoff is the only moment in your life where you have a pause that is forced on you. Most people never actually stop in their careers to ask themselves if they're going in the right direction. They just keep going on this treadmill and hoping they'll get a promotion and hoping they'll get more money instead of intentionally designing where they want their career to go. You see, what I've learned is that your career is not like a straight linear ladder. It's a zigzag. I went from history to IT consulting, and after that layoff, I was like, where am I going to go to next? Being laid off is just like literally hitting the pause button on a video, and it doesn't reset your progress. Ask yourself honestly, if you had any role right now, not just the one similar to what you had before, what would it actually be? And that question alone is worth your time before moving on to your next application. You know, for me, purpose became the anchor. It was about knowing what I value and trying to take on more meaningful work. That gave me a starting point for me to apply when it came to my applications. And so we've covered the emotional reality, the practical moves you need to make, and the mindset. Here's how it all ties together. So at the start, I said that my layoff felt like nothing, just this strange, eerie calm. But now what I know is that calm wasn't emptiness. It was me actually getting time to figure out what had happened and where I want to go next. You see, you're not behind, you're not a failure. Whether you're in your 20s or your 40s or your 50s watching this, you're actually navigating something that's genuinely very hard and that people don't really give you good advice on. And the fact that you're watching this, you're thinking about it, means that you're already doing more than most people. And you don't have to be laid off from a job to start thinking about where you want to go in your career. But if this gave you something real, subscribe, because I make these for the younger version of myself. And if that's where you are right now, I want you to stick around and join the journey. And if the next thing that you need to figure out is your finances and how to actually manage your money through difficult situations like these, then I've got a video on that right here that you're going to want to watch. I'll see you there. Peace out.